Hey, I'm Sarah, and this is the Goddess in Training podcast. This isn't about being perfect or polished or having it all figured out. This is about what happens when you actually start listening to your body, your intuition, your patterns, your truth. I'm asking big questions and having real conversations, sometimes messy and sometimes magical, with people who've lived through it, grown through it, and still don't have all the answers. If you've ever doubted yourself, betrayed your gut, or wondered if you're the only one, you're not. Let's talk about it. Hi, welcome back to Goddess in Training. I'm Sarah. This week marks 1 year and 47 episodes of this podcast. I sat down to record something meaningful to mark the occasion, and what came out was just this. No guest, no outline, no agenda, just me, a year's worth of reflection, some birds in my yard, and a patch of lawn I never got around to mowing. If you're new here, this might be a strange place to start, or maybe it's exactly the right place. And if you've been with me from the beginning, thank you. You'll recognize some of what surfaces here. This is episode 48. Hi, welcome back to Goddess in Training. I'm your host, Sarah, and gosh, this week marks the 1 year anniversary of this podcast. And I have been sitting here trying to figure out what to do to celebrate this milestone. I have recorded 47 episodes of this podcast, and which is kind of crazy to think about. In the midst of it, it's like, you have those feelings of, am I doing enough? I got to keep up with the schedule. And how do I grow? How do I expand? How do I reach more people? How do I get more compelling guests? And so I'm taking a moment to sit back and think about what this past year has been, and to also reflect on the fact that I'm meeting all this resistance in this moment when it comes to content creation. I just started a new job, I'm in a new relationship, and every time I sit down to talk to podcast guests about what they might want to talk about, or look at my schedule of content, or sit down to write on Substack, I just feel this strong resistance. Resistance that's just as strong as the pull was last June 2025 when I started this. I had so much energy and so much momentum and knowing that this is what I was supposed to do. And right now, I don't know why. It's just like, all right, not now for some reason. But so I felt like maybe just sitting and talking from my heart and reflecting on the past year might be the way to commemorate this anniversary. So going back to the beginning and thinking of where I started back in June of 2025, I had been laid off from my job because of the Doge cuts, and I had to lay off the majority of my staff, and it was a really, really stressful moment, and I was depleted. And I also found myself thinking about the nonprofit world that I had been in for 2 decades and what the real impact had been of the work that I had supported as a fundraiser. And it was a real moment of introspection that carried through the entire year from June to now we're in June 2026. And so many revelations have come through this podcast, through the conversations that I've had with people who are healers and looking inward and helping other people, but also people who have also been in the nonprofit industry and people who have deep insight into the state of the world and what this all might mean. This, the greater this. What does life, why are we here? What are we doing? And so there's the minutia of our work and our families and what we do day to day. And then there's this overwhelming question of like, why? What are we doing? What are we doing here? So I had been laid off and I took an intentional pause. Probably about 2 years prior to being laid off, I had this dream about having a podcast. I knew nothing about podcasting whatsoever. I had only listened to a few podcasts myself. So really, I knew nothing. And I think part of what the podcast served in my life was a moment to learn a ton of new skills. I had to learn how to appear on camera, how to edit, how to find podcast guests, how to write intros, all of these skills, which I can now see might have some other purpose in my future, but it may not be a podcast. It might be something completely different, but those skills may have been stepping stones to get me to where I am ultimately headed, which right now, sitting here on this day, I'm not quite sure what that is. I have some inklings, but do we ever really know? I don't think we do. So in June 2025, I jumped right in. I started out by reaching out to my network and thinking about the people who have interesting stories to tell and who would be willing to sit and talk to me for an hour. Thankfully, I have so many wonderful friends who said yes. And we had such really open, raw, insightful conversations. I'm a little bit biased because I'm the one creating it and asking the questions, but I have learned so much through these conversations, and I hope my listeners have as well. I started out talking to my best friend Emmanuel about relationships and thinking back to this wasn't intentional, but so many of the themes that I started with in those first episodes have carried through in so many different ways across these 47 episodes. And so love and relationships is definitely a huge theme and a theme that I'm leaning into a lot when it comes to my writing. And that might be a direction that this podcast goes into because ultimately we are beings that are meant to love and express love and embody love. And more as time passes, that's what I believe. That might be it. That might be it, to give and receive love. That might be our purpose. I also talked with my friend and colleague, Deborah Collins, about work and about what it means to show up at work and how to be authentic at work. And I have recently started a new traditional job where I'm thinking about that a lot. So work takes up so much of our lives. And like I said, I had been a nonprofit fundraiser for 20 years, and I felt like I had such a great purpose for so much of that time that I was working toward making the world a better place. And then tangentially, I got to meet amazing people and go to amazing places. And so those were wonderful perks and develop skills that can carry through really any industry. And so I'm so incredibly fortunate to have had that as a career path. But as I moved up in leadership roles, I found my real purpose to be helping my colleagues, being a sounding board and being a true friend and mentor in a lot of ways. And those are the moments that have brought me the most joy is having those relationships in the workplace. But it's tough to show up as your authentic self. And in this new position that I'm in, I I struggle with that a little bit. And partially because it's new and I'm just getting to know the organization and getting to know the people. But I also have this other world where I'm putting myself out there here in Goddess in Training, an incredibly open way and talking about all aspects of my life. And that's free and open for all of my colleagues to see the crazy things that I've done and my inner world in a lot of ways. And so I find myself not being as open when I'm face to face with people. It's all out there for them to see, but my day to day is pretty much nitty gritty how to raise money for this organization. And I will say that I'm working for a nonprofit that I really truly believe in, especially in this moment in time when the world feels really chaotic and where it really is difficult to know what's true and what to trust. And local news is what I'm raising money for. It's the one place that I think is so important to preserve and to grow because AI is growing. We have fewer face to face conversations. People are craving authenticity and truth. And there's so much distrust of big corporations and industry. And, we are seeing journalists at the highest level blowing the whistle and saying that they're being censored or being
directed to tell stories in a very specific way. And I think that the only solution to that is to bring it home to our communities and build trust there is the only way for people to really be able to cut through the noise and understand what's actually shaping our world. So interestingly, the third episode that I dropped at the beginning of June 2025 when I started Goddess in Training was with my dear friend Mage Marigold. And I did a follow-up episode with her. It'll be linked in the show notes just a few weeks ago. And that's where we go totally woo, where we go from love and work and then talk about the spiritual world and how we can tap into it and have it guide our lives in a way where we have more certainty and happiness and an understanding of maybe the bigger picture of, again, our purpose and how to interact with the people around us. And we talked about this in the episode, but Mage and I, when we get together, it seems like things open up and accelerate in ways for us, and that we're on these kind of parallel tracks where we know that we're going to come together again at some point, but we're kind of like off doing our own things, but we will converge again. Every time we converge, there's some kind of like firework that then changes the direction of our lives. And so I hope that you all have those people in your lives and foster those relationships and recognize those relationships and recognize those moments and those synchronicities, because that's all of what I think the commonality is amongst all of the healers that I've spoken to on this podcast is there are so many different paths to get to this place where we are feeling at ease and that we have purpose and understanding of the world around us. And something that I come back to frequently is that we are so tiny and insignificant in the grand scheme of this existence. And one of my favorite sayings is, what we know is so tiny compared to what we do not know. And all of the conversations that I've had on this podcast is kind of tapping into that space, the like, what don't we know? And how can we have ease with the fact that we don't know so much? We don't know what happens when we die. We don't know our true purpose. We can guess why certain things happen in our lives and set us on a path. We can theorize about the purpose of religion and what else might be there in the unseen of this world. And we can get little glimpses of it. And when we have these deep, open, authentic conversations, I think that we get a little bit more through, not necessarily the logical words that are being spoken, but through kind of the energy of the conversation, the energy of the person. And I'm brought back to a couple of episodes, one of which really, really speaks to that element that when you have a conversation or when you listen to a podcast, you're not necessarily hanging on to every word, but you're getting some energetic exchange from the person on the screen, or you're getting some energetic exchange from the person that you're speaking with. And this happens over and over and over again when I have these conversations. And my friend Jilly, who is an angelic channeler, she is someone that I had on the podcast. She has this way of speaking with her hands and channeling, and the words are coming through, and the words don't make real logical sense. But there's a feeling that you get when you listen to her, and it's this feeling of calm and that everything's going to be okay and certainty in this life that it just is so incredibly uncertain. And that's one that I come back to frequently. It's also one where my animals, my dogs and the cat, who's not here all the time, but they were all up all over Jilly, and they were feeling that energy. And in a way that, again, we don't really understand, but it was there, it was palpable. Thinking about that episode is making me have a realization because I've been having resistance, like I said, to creating, to creating more with the podcast, to writing more. And I think I've been sitting too much in my logical brain about it. I've sunk into this place where even now, as I'm recording this episode, I'm like, okay, I got to think about the flow and I got to think about the arc of the conversation and what I'm saying. And does it make sense? I'm thinking back to what I already said and I'm thinking about, how I'm going to edit this and what the final product is going to look like. And maybe that's where the resistance is coming from, is that I'm just overthinking it. And perhaps I need to lean into just being on camera and imparting energy in a way that my friend Jilly is so good at. And maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe I'm supposed to just sit here with you and shoot the shit and talk about my life or talk about the lives of my guests and not think so much about, well, have we covered this topic before, or is this really pertinent to people's lives in this moment? When I started, I just knew that I was supposed to create. And that's what I did. I just created. I just sat with people and whoever came up, I would say yes to. If people wanted to be on the podcast, I would say yes. If I ran into people and had an interesting conversation, I would ask them to do an episode. And it just flowed in this really, really organic way. And I think after a while, though, the flow got interrupted by all of these logistics. And maybe that's why I'm feeling this kind of resistance. Maybe it's because I'm entrenched now in this, back into this world of calendars and meetings and agendas and schedules and lists. And that's kind of interrupting the flow that I was in for really a year, where I just did. I just went and I was and I created. And all of the logical brain part that I feel called to do, I feel it's necessary in this moment, but it's interrupting that creation, the creative flow that I had when I first started. But that's the paradox, I guess. Another episode I think about frequently is with Prashanthi, talking about paradox. And maybe it's necessary to go through these phases, that right now in this moment when I feel like it's necessary to sit in my logical brain and to have a real world job where I have a calendar and I have lists and I have goals and I'm working toward those goals and I'm being measured against those goals, is having me appreciate and look back at the moments where I was in the flow. And then I can bring myself back into a little bit more of a balance by thinking about where I am and where I was and how I can kind of hold both of them, one in each hand, and have both of the elements of those worlds live together. Because if I was in flow all the time, I think I would lose the appreciation for the flow. If I was in my logical brain and deep into lists and schedules, most of us know that that is when we experience dis-ease, that we're way far on that side of the spectrum and not in tune with our intuition. And we're just going and doing and thinking, overthinking most of the time. That circles back around to my first episode with my best friend, Emmanuel, who experienced me in that time in my life when I felt like everything was so chaotic. I was going through a divorce and I had small children and I had a job and I took no time to sit and be. And I didn't know how to. I have told this story several times where I talked to a healer at that time and she asked me, well, Sarah, what do you like to do? And I froze up and I was unable to answer the question. She did not pursue another meeting with me, I think because she knew intuitively that I was not at a place at that time to go beyond that. And I wasn't. I was incapable of seeing beyond the next minute and feeling beyond the next minute because my life was just in such chaos. And my best friend, Emmanuel, told me the simple, simple thing that if I can impart anything upon the people that I'm coaching or the listeners to this podcast or my readers, is that maybe that's it. When we sit in the quiet and we just exist, so much of the swirl, the chaos, the inner thoughts that keep going around and around in our brains, it allows it to kind of fade away. And we get back into the essence of who we are. And that essence is love. And so I really appreciate thinking back and reflecting upon those first three episodes because they're elements of our lives. It's the work piece, it's the love piece, and it's the spirituality piece, the intuition piece, which is at the core of what Goddess in Training is. And in any moment, we can have more of one of those elements or less of one of those elements. And we're always kind of striving for more and seeking. And what I've been reflecting on in my own life right now is I'm not really seeking anything. I'm in this moment of pause and contentedness and knowing that everything is okay and knowing in a really, really profound way that all of the little things, all of the tiny, seemingly insignificant things that have happened in my life and the significant things that have happened over the past year, like losing my job, almost dying in Costa Rica of an infection, and changing the trajectory of my thoughts about my purpose in that project, and being in a new relationship and being deep into thought, reflection around love and that relationship ending and starting this new relationship. Uh, the thing that I always come back to is I am exactly where I'm supposed to be in every moment. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to share so many moments with my podcast guests and with my listeners and my readers and the people that I've coached. And yeah, 47 episodes has been such a learning experience. And that's just it. It's learning, experiencing, being, and loving. And I hope that you have felt love as you listen to these episodes because it's really what every episode is grounded in. And the thing that I think about a lot, I talk a lot about using plant medicine on this podcast because it's something that has really transformed my life. And every single time I transport myself using plant medicine, the vehicle through which I go from this world to the other, to some other world, is emotion, is love. Love is that connective tissue that binds us all. The seen and the unseen, the trees and the birds that I'm looking at, and my dog sitting in at the other room, and our loved ones who have passed, and our ancestors, and all of the other energetic beings that are known and unknown to us. Love is the way to access them. And it's through that connection that we then have intuition. As much as I am sitting and being, I am thinking about the future a little bit and what might Goddess in Training turn into. I have some great guests who I've been talking to and who I will be interviewing at some point in the near future when it feels right. And I have so many ideas of things to write about. And again, there will be a moment when it feels right again, and I will get back into the creative process, but not right now. I am just sitting and being. And I think that this moment of sitting and being will make more sense to me at some point in the future. Maybe it's rest, maybe it's introspection, maybe it's just that balance piece where now is a time when I just need to experience that calendaring and those aspects of the world. There are some things that are converging in my life. I have felt a pull to facilitate more plant medicine journeys for people. It's something that has brought me an extreme amount of joy and has really allowed me, myself, in my own work to heal and to find peace and joy in every moment. And being able to help others feel that is such a great honor. And so that's something that might be in my future in terms of spending more energy. As people come to me, I still have coaching available. Again, sitting and witnessing people and holding space for them in moments of transition is also such an amazing honor. What I've found in my coaching practice is something that is mirrored in my own life, that when I'm seeking things, I often come to the realization that I already have exactly what I'm looking for. And I see that with my coaching clients, that most of the time people are feeling some discomfort with where they are or some longing for something that they don't have. And when you really sit with that, with those feelings and those desires and the discomfort, you often realize that you actually have exactly what it is that you're looking for. And it's a matter of redirecting your sight and redirecting your perspective, that we hold ourselves back, that we don't always feel like we are deserving of love, abundance, all of the things that are the most fulfilling experiences in life. But we are, each and every one of us is worthy of everything. And it's just a matter of embodying that, realizing it, knowing that, feeling it in ourselves. And when you do that, all of the noise, all of the you can't, you should do this, you shouldn't do that, tends to kind of fade away. Going back to something that I said earlier, what we know is so tiny compared to what we don't know. And gosh, I don't really know anything, y'all. I sit here and talk to you and write to you in hopes that it can bring a little bit of joy and love and peace to your lives. But it's really all you. It's all on the inside. We all are creating our own realities. And with that, I'm going to sign off episode number 48. If you are new to Goddess in Training, please go back and look at the catalog and see if there's anything that resonates with you. There's just so much wisdom in each of my guests, and they don't have to be listened to in order. There's no order. There's no agenda. It's really just people connecting, people who really, really want the best for each and every human being out there in the world, and sharing their path, sharing the tools that they've used to get to a place that's more full of ease. And really, that's all we want, ease. And I just keep looking out at the birds that are out in my yard and the area of my lawn that I didn't get to mow yet. And they're really, really enjoying the fact that I didn't mow that space, because I think there are more bugs that they can eat there. And so I didn't know when I didn't mow that area of the lawn, it was because I ran out of time and said, all right, well, it'll happen at some other point. And I had no idea that it was going to make the birds so incredibly happy. And with that, I'll leave it there.
Thank you for tuning in to Goddess in Training. I hope something in this episode stirred your knowing or softened your heart. If it spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it, or leave a review or comment to help others find us. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to hear more conversations like this, please consider supporting Goddess in Training on Patreon. For more tools and offerings to deepen your intuition practice, visit goddessintraining.online. You can also join the Scroll of Sashat on Substack for twice-weekly stories of how I followed my intuition. The music for Goddess in Training is Madre Ayahuasca by Arkawa, and you can find more of his music and the link to his website in the show notes. Remember, your intuition is not a mystery, it's a memory. Keep listening. Resplandor de fuego, estrellita, tabaco santo, fuerza de rapel, soplo de luz, soplo encantado, viajecito, bendición del cielo, fortaleza, tigrecito de la selva, madre Ayahuasca.